I can also introduce the Council's 106 lawyer, which is some units over there.
Hello, and what's your name, please?
My first name is Samra, S-A-M-R-A.
Yes.
And the surname is Yunus, Y-U-N-U-S.
And you're a solicitor for the council?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
So if I just sort of run through from the sort of top. The first one's not actually an obligation. This is just there's an area of land within. It's quite useful to refer to Plan 10, where there's 2 areas of land which the owner can't be identified, but it's within the public realm and the community facilities. The obligation is, if once that's obtained, that the ownership of that then the person's obliged to enter into a new 106 on the same terms.
Okay.
The next is the usual notifications provisions. So you've got a change of ownership. There's quite a lot of units here, so it's not every single one, it's every 20. So it's just so the council knows what's going on. So notify before commencement of development, so they know, and notify first occupation for each phase. Next one, moving on, is clause 6.4. This is one of the ones you were more interested in. This is a restriction on parking permits. When we drafted this, we took into account the Kadari case, so we made sure that it was drafted with Section 16 of the Greater London Council Act.
So just pausing there.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether, we do have a copy of the Court of Appeal's judgment in Kadari, which is the case that you had in mind, I imagine.
Well, it's what the Westminster and then the Kadari.
Yeah.
Yes, which is the one
that led to it.
It's the Court of Appeal. Well, it's the Court of Appeal case, so it's the key case. And very, very briefly, so as you, I imagine, do know, or obviously I'm not entirely sure. I mean, the point in that case was that restricting the ability of an occupier of a flat or a home or whatever to apply for a parking permit, utilising powers in section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act was found to be, well, that sort of restriction was found to be outside the scope of section 106.
That's right.
But in London there are different provisions or additional provisions, and the relevant provision is section 16 of the Greater London General Powers Act. And it was held by the Court of Appeal that one can restrict a person's ability to apply for a parking permit under that London legislation. And I hope you won't be surprised to hear, needless to say, my instructing solicitor in drafting the Section 106 was aware of this and has taken it into account and has drafted the provision so as to rely on the relevant section in the London legislation.
And what I refer to as the Section 106 includes reference to that.
Yes,
so
it's
not
specifically
just under that.
If you look at Section 1.3, clause 1.3.
Well, it's right on the title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Section 16 of.
So that's one that I say we saw coming. That would be grossly unfair that Mr. Thompson saw coming. So.
Good.
Moving on, clause 6.5, local employment and training strategy. So this is to apply during construction and during operation. The operation bit's not the residential element, so it's just the church and the retail unit.
Right.
And you submit that 3 months before commencement of the development, and then it's implemented during construction. So it captures it during the construction period, and then obviously during the operation as well. Next one is clause 6.9. So this is for the 39 units. This is 27 affordable rent and 12 intermediates. So the intermediate is a sort of a wide phrase to give some flexibility, but shared ownership, shared equity, etc. This is all on the south side. So phase 1 owners, the people on phase 1, are to provide the affordable dwellings, and this is to be prior to accommodation of 25% of the private dwellings. They're not to sell them, dispose of them, of the affordable dwellings, other than to a registered provider. And then there's the typical cascade mechanism that you often see that registered providers require, which in certain circumstances, after a 3-month period, they can set it without in order so they can get their funding. Plan 3 is where they're set out. Clause 6.10, that's the car club. So it's shown, this is shown on Plan 7, and is part of the Phase 2 highway works. So it'll be because it's on the highway, it will be done as part of those works, which is another clause which we'll come to. But what happens is you have to, early on, 6 weeks prior to first occupation of Phase 1, you have to submit the details of the car club and enter into a contract with a car club provider. It's not just Zip Car, it could be anyone. And then the basic principle is there's 3 years free membership to each dwelling. This one sort of goes beyond your sort of normal drafting because it actually makes, if someone isn't in there for 3 years, they can actually pass that membership on to the next person. So they get at least 3 years. And because it's 2 phases, it has to work across phases. So when it's first available in Phase 1, the Phase 2 people won't be there. So it ensures that both get at least 3 years as it goes along.
I'm with you.
Because it also allows for the opportunity, is if it's provided elsewhere other than where we've got it, we can provide that membership earlier than providing the Phase 2. So it just gives that flexibility to allow it.
Okay. Mr. King and your colleagues, I'm happy for this to be a discussion. If you want to ask questions on the clauses as we go through them, do so.
Just received this.
Right.
I'm up to number 26. And
So those are the conditions I think you're reading.
Those are conditions, not the...
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, right.
No,
we'll
we're
come
on
to
to
those in a minute.
We're on something different.
Yeah. Okay, please continue.
So clause 6.11, 6.12, this is the public realm works and then the management and maintenance of them. They're actually approved, they're part of the approved works, they're part of the scheme, so they're part of the approved plans, but they're also the details approved under condition 6 as we're proposing. But we're required to provide those works. You can't occupy Phase 2 before those works are completed, and then the sort of classic has to be retained, managed and maintained at the expense for the lifetime of the development. And there's a strategy there, sort of classic strategy that you get. Next one's community facilities, obviously a very key one. This is clause 6.13. The facilities are all set out in Plan 8. And this documents a repetition of CD 1.6. The only difference is the track changes have been accepted. Now, in this, before 6 weeks before the opening of the community facilities, you have to submit what you intend to be the final one, because obviously what's in the document is a draft. You submit the final one, the council then approves it. There's a restriction, classic restriction, that 75% of the private dwellings in Phase 2 can't be occupied until the community facility is practically completed. And then there's an obligation not to use the area designated for community facilities other than for use as community facilities in accordance with that approved plan.
So the 106 doesn't have a final plan.
It's not the final one, yeah.
A draft.
It says substantially in the form, so it's
right. So is there a condition that requires that, or is it all within the 106?
There might, I think, condition 4852.
I mean, is that your intention?
Well, this would.
Do
this,
they work together?
Well, this one on its own.
It's standalone.
Standalone, this will work because
Okay.
this contains the. You have to submit the plan, then the plan's finalised. That's the one, and then.
Right.
And as you rightly pointed out, we're just going to correct that reference to 3.3 rather than 2, just so we'll submit a new one, just to correct that error you rightly pointed out.
So, whilst in my report I might comment on what's in this community facilities management and maintenance plan, it is only a draft.
Exactly. And it's very much in the control of the council to approve.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the final version the requirement in the 106 is that the final version should be, is it substantially in the form?
Substantially in the form. I think it's
Okay.
6.6.
Take me to that clause.
It's either in the definition or 6.13. So if I just... It's probably in the definition. So if you go to page 12,
Yes.
you've got the community facility management and maintenance plan, and it says means a plan substantially in the form of the draft annexed here 2 at Schedule 5.
Right. Okay.
You'll know, sir, I'm sure you do know that it's extremely commonplace to work on that basis. So it's
Well,
to
I'm
ensure...
not sure I've quite come across a communities facilities management.
No, the
process.
whole idea of a plan or strategy
Oh, yes.
in a section 106 being a draft, the final version,
Yeah.
once the dust has settled, so to speak, the final
right.
version is to be agreed with the council and
But
one has a
that means it
control.
will need a condition, won't it, to say to be approved in writing by the council?
No,
No,
it gets
no.
approved under the 106. So, yeah.
As it so happens, there is a condition on which embraces this and other aspects to do with the use of the building. That's condition 48. But
Right, okay.
even if one struck that condition through, I'm not suggesting you should, the section 106 is a freestanding.
Yes. Well, my point was that it says a plan substantially the form of the draft
Yeah.
annexed, but it doesn't say if there are any differences. It doesn't give the council the control over that.
Yes, it does.
Oh, it
Yeah,
does.
they have to approve it. So that's the whole point of this is you submit it 6 weeks before
Well,
opening.
it says to be submitted by the owner to the
Yeah.
council.
So if you then go to clause 6.13.
But does it then say that the
Yeah.
council has a right?
Exactly. So if you,
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Does it? Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Did you say 613, I think you said? Was
6.13.
613.
So 630.3.
Thank you.
The page
So it's, so the owner further covenants with the council to submit to the council at least 6 weeks prior to the opening of the community facility the
I've
plan
got it
for
there.
the council's written approval
Approved in writing,
and no
yeah.
occupation before.
You are
Yeah.
It's all,
splendid.
it's all bolted down, sir, and
Yep.
if it isn't, I'm sure you'll spot that and we'll make sure it is.
Yep.
Splendid. Okay, please carry on.
The next one is the library link, and this is improving the steps up to the listed wall and then onto the to the library area.
Yeah.
So this is in Plan 9. It's shown,
Right.
and this can have to work up in more detail as all things are. But so you can't commence phase 2 until you've submitted to the council the sort of fine details.
And you couldn't
then
put that in a condition, hence it's in this agreement.
Yeah, because there's a slight element here is there's works on our land and there's a little bit of works on the council's land.
I
And so,
understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so there's a clause in here saying,
No, that's fine.
yeah, we'll do it,
Okay.
but if otherwise not. Then there's moving on to clause 6.15. This is a section 278. This is for the phase 1, the south site highway works.
Right.
So here again, you enter into a 278 agreement. This is the sort of plan 5A and 5C.
I understand the
Yeah,
principle
fine.
behind it.
The only thing to say additional to that, there's a lay-by, and we may have to dedicate some land to be footpath highway as it goes round it. So it allows for the provision to ensure that pedestrians can go round it, and that comes from our land.
Right. Okay.
And then the next one, clause 16.16, that's phase 2 highway works, same concept, and then the same, we can dedicate extra land around the car club and the lay-by along Banstead Road. You can dedicate a little bit more land there. And so,
I
yep.
follow.
That's plan 5B. Clause 16.17, this is the safeguarding highway land. So this has to be safeguarded, and then Transport for London want it to be transferred prior to first occupation of the development, so it goes to them.
I understood that.
Yep, fine. Clause 16.18 is monitoring fees. So this is £1,500 per obligation, and there's an error there, that should be on commencement of the development.
Right.
Clause 6.20 is retention of the existing scheme architects. We're making a suggestion for a minor change there, which is just to, we drafted it partly to sort of save any kind of professional ego, one architect's not better than another, etc.
Architects do very rarely go out of business.
Yeah. So all we said is
that makes sense.
We remove the words one or other. We retain both.
Yeah,
that's right.
So that's going to be a change in the final version that you'll have for Tuesday.
Right.
So at the moment, the draft reads that one or other of the architects' firms is to be retained, and it's going to be changed that we are obliging ourselves to retain both of them to know that we've got...
Or of similar calibre.
Yeah. Or of similar calibre.
Thank you.
Next one is the review mechanism. So this has to be read, clause 6.24 and schedule 4, the two go together, and unfortunately one of those difficult ones to read because it plucks in lots of different definitions from elsewhere in the 106, but there's one review at the end of phase 2 after 90% of the private dwellings in phase 2. There's if at that time you don't reach a benchmark figure that's been agreed with the council, £622 per square feet of the private dwellings, then you don't have to do a review mechanism because the scheme's not making enough money to warrant going through to do a full-blooded re-review. If it's above that figure, and obviously there's a lot of hope that it is, then it goes to an independent viability assessment consultant that goes through that, and then it goes through the sort of the classic model of you take the revenues, you minus the costs, and outcomes whether there's a development surplus with a developer return, which is 20% on GDV.
Yes, I had a note to ask about 20%.
Yeah.
In the earlier documents, it was talking about 17, then it went up to 18.
Yeah.
Why?
This is not the return. This is just the conceptually. If you went further than 20%, then that would be the figure that you would then start paying the development surplus. So it's not saying it's not sort of the factual position as estimated is 17% or whatever it is.
So you might be confusing. Well, I don't know whether you are, but
it's quite possible.
Well, you heard from I couldn't possibly comment. So you heard from Mr. Cunningham that that Thorne says has accepted a lower return than would be the normal expectation particularly for a complex project of this nature. That's a hit they've taken. That's their bit of unhappiness. Do you remember? He said everyone's a bit unhappy.
I heard his evidence.
That is not the same, obviously, as the threshold that's used in the 106 clause for clawback, if you like.
Well, he was talking about 13% or something, but the councils in their viability, they talked about a higher level at 17. But this is now jumping to 20.
No. Those are
still the same confusion.
Those are the estimated figures of return. So in that scenario, you're not going to be making as much money as you hoped in order to do it. So the 20% is just a conceptual. If you reach that figure, you then provide a contribution in lieu as a development surplus.
Yeah.
So 20% is a normal return.
Well, you say that, but I'm questioning whether that is the normal return.
Well,
whether
that's
that's
a normal
rather
return
high.
Oh gosh, no. For a complex project like this, it'd be more.
Well, the BNP talked about 17 being reasonable.
No. That's. I think we're.
Are we still across purposes?
I think we are, to be honest.
Okay.
Yes. But anyway, this is the review mechanism, which, as I understand it, which I'm sure I know is agreed by the council, and they would have obviously taken their independent advice on it. So.
Yeah, and we also went to the mayor, and the mayor had a very long look at this review mechanism. And
okay.
Yeah. It's 6% on affordable housing. It's just a slightly different return for that.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have another look.
Yeah,
thank you.
Fantastic. And then clause point 6.24 is phasing. So this is to ensure the affordable housing comes through. Phase 1 is commenced before phase 2, the south site before the island site.
Indeed. And in the the architect's plans, there are 3 phases, but in
Yeah.
this section 106, there are only 2 phases.
It comes back to that
Yeah.
point where you were
No,
saying...
I do understand it. Yeah, it
It's-
confused me for a while.
It's to allow, when we're doing construction, etc.
Yeah, no, I followed that.
Yeah.
The air quality contribution, well, it is what it is. I asked
Yeah.
questions about it.
And that's the anti-idling,
Yeah.
and that's the lot.
Okay. Mr. King and your colleagues, any questions on that?
On that long list,
On that long list or anything else in that document?
I had 2 questions. First one, Mr. Koski explained, and I think I now understand it, with the ban of parking permits. You can't do it, but you can do it in London, I think is the simplicity of what you said.
Exactly
outside
right.
London would have a problem, but mercifully for us, Purley is inside London.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Now, just to clarify that, because that was one of our questions we were going to ask. The other questions I've got, one may be for later on perhaps, but when you transfer the land to TfL or Croydon, will that just be a transfer of land and then the work gets undertaken later, or is it that within the transfer you have to hand it over with the work completed?
So it works as a sort of, there's various ones. So it's the public realm, the highway works, and the safeguarded land, and they all combine to work together to provide the solution of that corner. So they take the land, but you provide the public realm, and then you enter into a highways agreement for that corner. And so ultimately it's for TfL to say what they want and in that agreement, and that agreement is entered into under 6.16, and so it's prior to first occupation of phase 2.
Right. The improvements to the public realm in Banstead Road, which are really on the site but improve
Yeah.
the area, I presume that will be at the end of the construction rather.
So the phase, they're the public realm obligations, they're 6.12. They are, so you can't occupy phase 2 until they're done, basically.
Yeah. So that would mean if I say the good burghers of Purley will benefit before you occupy.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And
Just in that bit, you've got sort of the new trees going along. So there's an interaction between highway works at the same point there and public realm works. Public realm is on the private land,
Yeah.
and then the highway works are on the highway. But it will still be pavement. So you still go on to a sort of wider area. So.
And I presume with the widening of Russell Hill Road,
Yeah.
you won't actually know how that will take place until TfL put a plan together.
You agree the plans later on, the sort of detail in the highways agreement, so, and in the conditions. So.
The new access to the land outside the library, will that come at the end or will that come during?
So that's the library link element.
Yeah.
So that again will come. It's you can't occupy phase 2, so it's the same timescales as.
Okay. And my last point, which may be for a bit later, are there any improvements to the public realm in Purley elsewhere outside the island and the south side?
Other than you do the highway works outside those, so that
Yeah.
you get those improvements, and those are set out in the plans. But beyond that, no.
So,
Yeah.
so
Not going off into the gyratory and starting to do stuff.
it's
like
not
that.
going down the Brighton Road where the shops are.
Exactly. Yeah, not going down
It's
there.
confined to the site,
To the immediate
area.
surroundings. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've noted, and I mustn't forget, clause 2.4, which puts a duty on me to say whether any of
Sorry, I should have said. Yeah.
the bits don't meet. Okay, anything else on the 106 agreement? Then can we move on to the conditions, please?
Thank you, sir. I'll ask Mr. Pearson to swap what Mr. Thompson saying. Oh, yes. So the note is now ready that I refer to. So whilst people are
Splendid.
switching over, I'll just have the note distributed. This is document number 13. I'll just explain what's in it, sir, and it
Please.
repays being read. If I can just make myself a note of what this is.
Always helps.
Always helps.
So 13.
Document 13, and so this is just you could almost call it miscellaneous. You know, a variety of points have been raised at various times, and we've sought to respond to a number of those. And so the first,
thank you very much.
I won't read this all out aloud now, obviously, but the first section deals with points that were raised about sprinklers, and it gives all the references and our commitment to having sprinklers in the tower, or the tall building elements and so on. So that's all set out then. Sun, light in the southern side courtyard. We're picking up on our response to the Residents' Association statement. We said there that various diagrams were available, and we produced them as an appendix to this note, sir.
Right.
Rest assured, when the sun's shining in summer, you will...
Okay, I will read that
Thank you.
at my leisure, as they say.
Trees, retention of trees in section 3. Scots pine on the tower, there's an awful lot of material about that, sir,
Right.
which I won't go through now. I don't think we've been able to find another United Kingdom building with pine trees on the roof, but we have found the new towers in Milan, where apparently there are much higher buildings.
Well, there's one in Lucca, I know that.
Yeah, but in Milan,
Milan's getting further.
these must have been built after my last holiday in Milan, but there are over 700 trees on the roofs of 2 towers in Milan.
Good Lord,
I think it must be worth a special visit to go back
It must,
and see
yes. I'm not sure the inspector will pay for it.
I'm sure they would, sir. I'm sure they would. They did actually pay for your colleague to go and visit various buildings in Europe when I did the Shards.
Yes, he told me that. I was aware of that one.
Section 5, air quality in community spaces. That was the point I drew attention to earlier on, so when I was trying to take the polluted wind out of your sails, so to speak.
Yes.
Then on flood risk, there was some information requested the other day that's referred to.
Right.
You asked where some assessment of the heritage area along Brighton Road is dealt with. We've given you the reference. Sweat path analysis and so on. Further details there. You asked Mr. Cunningham about whether they've had experience of retaining architects on schemes. He explained that they had. He thought that the instances of that happening were appended in his statement. They're not, and so we've produced them here. Then there's a note about, just to drive home, that our scheme complies with all relevant policies, and an alternative scheme, for example, putting the church on the other side of the road would not comply, so that's all dealt with. So that is an incredibly rapid overview of what's in this note.
That's extremely helpful. Thank you
sir.
to you and your team. I'll read those, and if there's any questions...
Thank you, sir. And just to let you know, there is another one coming on use of the community facilities, just to absolutely give you, the infinite detail on that. There's a little paper on viability matters, various points that you raised the other day, yesterday I think it was.
Yeah.
There's a little note coming in relation to air quality matters, the point about the diesel engines that you mentioned earlier on, and there's the final version of the 106. So all of those in hand, and you mentioned to me so informally, and I'll just say it out aloud, if we have any of those notes available before we resume on Tuesday, you'd be content for those to be emailed to the case officer, as
That's
I
right,
understand.
and then he'll send them on to me.
Right, good. That's
extremely helpful, thank you. So, on to conditions, please, which was Enquiry Document 7. And, if someone could talk me through these, please. Just, I don't want everything read out, but just a quick summary of what the condition is and what the reason is, and then there's a few that we can just focus on.
I think I'll get Mr. White to do that, sir.
I'm not surprised.
Do you want me to go through one at a time?
One at a time.
Do you have any favourites?
One at a time, but very quickly outline what they are and the reason, unless I sort of stop you or there's something you particularly want to deal with. Many of them are standard.
Hello? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Is it on? Hello? I'll get closer. I won't cuddle it.
I'm sure you're not meant to.
I don't want to come. Number one. So glazing some windows on the north elevation in relation to a neighbouring property, so there's no overlooking. Number 2, restricting the use of the roof on the south site, so there was an overlooking from the roof. Number 3, this is protection for trees in accordance with a tree survey report and protection plan. Number 4, this is belts and braces, because this involves carrying out highway works. Oh, sorry, yeah, that was phase 1 highway works.
I just had a query on that. The second line talks about secure the delivery works broadly in accordance with the drawing, which doesn't sound particularly precise to me.
We could take broadly out.
Yeah, do. Yeah.
Let me get a pen, sorry.
Okay.
Or if someone can...
Carry on.
Number 5, so detailed. So this is again. So these first 5 were all purely related to the south site.
I got that. Yes, thank you.
And number 5, a lot of very detailed requirements for. And then number 5 is just the south side.
That's details.
Well, I noticed number 5 says on either phase, sir, in the first line.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be relating to just phase 1.
Yeah, sorry.
Because there's a different list on the condition in phase 2. That's
It
right.
was well spotted, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you.
You're really on fire today, aren't you?
Anyway, highly detailed, even for the south side. Number 6. This is a sort of a landscape. This is both sites now. Landscaping to include public realm, planting, hard landscaping, joins between public realm where they meet each other. Number 2, it should probably include details regarding the trees on the roof, as well as the top of the tower, making sure they're permanently secured.
That was a point that was raised the other day, sir, and I think it was pointed out to you. It's in 6.2. We just highlight it now. It includes a requirement for the means of permanently securing the trees.
Thank you. Just on 6.9, at the end of that it says the strategy for permanently securing trees shall be maintained in perpetuity. Should that be retained or retained and maintained?
Point sentence of 9.
Literally just above the word reason.
All letting work shall be provided in accordance with the approved details on the site before. Yeah.
Be no harm to put retained and maintained.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're the first
belts
amongst
and braces.
we're the first amongst those who don't want these trees to fall off the roof, sir. So
quite.
We're very happy for that.
Is someone making a note of this?
Someone is making notes. Are you making notes, Rob?
Okay.
Someone is making notes.
Well, I am, but I prefer if someone else brought me a clean
was it-
copy in due course.
It's on the list, so a revised list of conditions will be.
Don't worry, someone behind you, Kit Kat's already onto it.
Okay, so number 7.
It's on fire.
Number 7, is that where we... Yeah. So play space details prior to occupation, so that we know what sort of equipment, etc. is going in there. Number 8, detailed drainage strategy. This was a Thames Water request.
Now, is this surface or foul or both?
Well, it says foul or surface in the fourth
Halfway
line,
down it
so-
talks
Yeah,
about both, doesn't it?
Foul or surface.
So foul or surface.
But I was told it's not a combined system.
Right, so...
But it says no discharge of foul or surface into the public system.
So this covers both, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's both, is it?
It's both, but they are separate systems.
Yeah.
Right. And does this cover during construction or after or both?
Prior to commencement of development, you put the strategy.
Prior to commencement.
Okay.
It's both, because it's prior to commencement, and it has to be kept for the life of the development.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, indeed it
Yeah.
does.
Retained.
And then halfway down it says into the public system for part of the site. Does that mean a phase of the site or just any bit or what?
Well, it probably means any part of the site, I should think.
Doesn't
until
mean any part.
I would have thought, until the relevant drainage works
Yeah,
have been
any
constructed.
part.
That must be
Okay. Well, a few little points. If someone could have a look at the wording there.
Comes from the. Yeah, so basically what we've done here is taken, or we, I say royally, on the council and the other people in my team, in the team here, we've taken Thames Water's recommended condition.
Yeah, that's the usual problem, isn't it?
That's not to say it's well drafted. That's to say. Yeah.
Okay.
So I imagine it should be from Any parcel.
Any
yeah.
parcel.
Yeah.
Okay, number 9, please.
Similar Thames Water condition about method statement for any piling, if it is to happen.
I think there's a later one on piling as well, but we'll wait till we get there.
Yeah, we've noticed there's a few that...
Yeah. Okay, move on.
So number 10 is the impact studies, which obviously talk about the infrastructure.
Yes. 11.
This is the Historic England requirement for archaeological investigation or programming methodology.
The first paragraph doesn't refer to archaeology or remains of human activity.
Interesting, because those where that's their wording. So I think.
I puzzled when I read it. I thought,
Yeah, you have to get down to A and B before you work out what it's about. Okay, move on to...
Well, we better make that clear.
I think
it would help, please.
Or even if there's... Remind me, so Secretary of State decision letters do have headings in the conditions, don't they?
Well,
No?
it's a moot point. I tend to take headings out because they're not part of any condition.
Okay. In that case, we're right into the condition. We're right.
Yeah.
Archaeology into
You know, I think each condition should be standalone.
Fair enough.
But there are different views on it.
Indeed.
12.
This is screening, so to any mechanical plant.
Does this just relate to the roof?
It says to all external.
Is any other external mechanical plant
It says
proposed?
I don't know if there's any. I don't think there's any plans.
I mean, if there is any other mechanical plant on the outside, I'd like to know where. So can we have the word roof in? And perhaps
it's in the end. It's in the end.
It's
It's
in-
in
it's
the
in-
reason anyway. So.
yeah, or perhaps make clear that nothing
the
else
roof-
is allowed other than the roof, and this just applies to the roof.
Roof in.
Okay, 13, please.
So these are related to electric vehicle charging points and making sure there's a 20% charging points and 20% passive provision.
Thank you.
14, prior to the first option, both phases. So this is maintaining these elements for the. Well, it's quite clear.
Are there drawings for this?
It would just be the the application drawings.
I mean, would it be better to put the drawing numbers on the condition?
Could do. I mean, the refuge storage will be over a few different drawings. Sorry. The refuge, it might get a little bit messy because the amount of different locations for the storage and different plans.
I see. Okay.
As in the messy, the condition might get a bit messy.
Yeah.
Not. Okay. just clarify that.
Yes. We're all a bit slow on your jokes on a Friday.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, understood. Foot 15.
This is an interesting one. So I drafted it, but so following planning committee, members have a concern about the amount of wasted cycle space because we look for 2 cycle spaces per flat almost,
yes.
And we're finding that there's just swaths not being used. So these two, 15 and 16, sort of seek a certain amount to be used, and then a monitoring on the second, or the remaining allowance.
Wouldn't it be simpler for the owner to put in a fresh application saying, I want to use this for something else?
What, section 73?
No, just a fresh application.
What do you mean, sir? So keep us to we provide the cycle parking spaces we've shown.
Yeah.
And if later on we
if after a
find
while
that
it's not being used, put in an application to use it for something else.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a lot easier?
Would from my perspective, but
Well, it would from mine.
I don't have an objection to it. It was something members did raise. Just it's your decision, sir.
Well, it's not, but
it's your recommendation.
Okay.
I mean, you're expressing
I've
a
heard
preference. We could simply in the next version of this put square brackets around these conditions, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Because from our perspective, I think the simpler route would be better, but obviously the Secretary of State might side with the members and decide.
If anyone has a really good way of drafting a clean version to allow for potential provision to be used for something else, obviously more than welcome to take that on board.
Yeah. Okay, so that was 15 and 16, 17.
So these travel plans to be submitted and checked through with Transport for London.
The second line has the word to encourage sustainable modes of transport. I mean, that's what travel plans do, but are there any
Stronger words?
aims or targets or anything to be achieved? Are they in the travel plan?
They certainly would be.
I thought they were. I thought they were in the draft, actually, which I did look at.
They would be.
Is that at the back of the 106? Or is that somewhere else?
You could change the word encourage to ensure.
CD 114 is a draft. CD 114.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I mean, if there's a way of tying it to a document or some targets or objectives or something, then I think that could go in the
Because
condition.
at the moment the condition is drafted as if no one's given thought to this beforehand, whereas there are...
My concern exactly.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
what we perhaps should do is there are two travel plans in draft, CD 114 for the homes and 115 for the Baptist Centre. And perhaps a better way of doing this would be to say substantially in accordance with those documents.
I think so.
Yeah.
Thank you. 18.
Delivery service plan to be agreed in conjunction with TfL, Transport for London.
Right. Now, this is the... Mr. King, this is something you raised, wasn't it, about the servicing and so on. So this is the condition. Let me know if you have any concerns about the wording of it. 19.
A waste collection management plan to be submitted and approved
20.
in accordance with the air quality assessment.
No, wait a minute.
21 in accordance with the noise impact assessment.
Just on 20, does the air quality assessment make specific recommendations?
It does, but as you've seen earlier on...
Are they unambiguous?
Well, no, they're not ambiguous. They're quite the opposite. They're very
I said,
clear.
are they unambiguous?
Well, they are unambiguous.
Yeah, good.
But we've actually, as I've told you earlier on, and as our notice confirmed in writing,
Right.
we've gone above and beyond. So
Yeah.
what I'm wondering is whether the above and beyond is captured here. You can see that I'm being very fair.
Okay.
Now, leave that with it. Can you leave that with us? We'll double check. This is the. Do you remember, Rob, the mechanical kit?
The evidence of Mr. Simmons.
In the Baptist Centre as well as the lower floors of the flats. There's that reference in the design and access statements in our notes.
Because
that we just
that one
handed in.
condition is the only thing that covers that, isn't it?
Is there another?
The details.
Ah, right, okay.
The mechanical two.
Let's carry on until we get there.
Okay.
5 and 41. as well.
Okay, when we get to 41, so we'll check
Right.
to see whether it's been
Good.
picked up or not. Yeah.
So 21.
Noise, in accordance with the noise impact report. Number 22, noise from air handling units to be below 10 dB. Number 23, this is insulation to flats for future occupiers to be in accordance with guidelines. Number 24, heat and power systems to be air quality neutral. Number 25, information and planting details of the green and brown roofs and a programme for provision. Them to be completed and maintained and, retained. 26 relates to carbon reductions, meeting the targets that they said they can meet.
Right. Does this mean renewable energy?
Well, that forms part of the way they get to the 35%.
Right. So where would that would that be?
So there's
PV or?
I think they are doing PV and a combined heat and power system and heat and exchange.
Right.
Those are the three elements, and those are indicated in the energy statement. How that, I mean,
My concern is where they would go. If they're just in the basement, then
CD 117.
so be it.
We have energy centres.
Right. Okay. Is that what this relates to, or is there anything else?
This is more the target.
Yeah, but it's how you would achieve
So
the target.
they've made provision and space for all the equipment that would be needed to achieve it, and their statements say they can achieve the 35. So this says you must do that.
Yeah. So they can achieve it just through the energy centres in the basement.
And the PV on the roof.
PV on the roof. Okay.
And that's shown on the plans. So they,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, it is it?
Yeah.
I've missed it. Okay,
Yeah.
that answers my question. Thank you. 27.
A strategy to show how they would connect to a district energy centre if that was ever to come into
Yeah.
Purley.
Understood.
Restriction on water, 110
Yeah.
litres per head per day.
I have a question on this, if I may. Does this relate to just residents, or is it landscaping use as well? And church use?
This is for the residents.
Just
But
residents.
the residents, this does take into account this figure, watering gardens as well, 110 litres per head per day.
Okay.
The mayor's strategy has 105 litres, but doesn't take into account water, whereas Croydon water feeding the garden. Croydon's 110 litres does, so that's where that's come from.
Okay.
So we'd better make sure this target refers to the residents
only.
the flats, yeah.
And that it refers
Not sure.
to gardens as well, and rooftop trees, I suppose.
Yeah. I'm
Got
not
to make sure some water for them.
I'm not sure a member of the congregation on Sunday is going to be able to get through 110 litres while
Well, it's a Baptist
while
church.
the minister is... while the minister... That's true. That's true. Yeah. There you are.
You're glad you raised that point, aren't you?
That's my
Right.
Catholic upbringing finding me out in the end. There you
Well,
are.
on to number 29.
This is the suggested condition from the lead local flood authority, provision of further some calculations and SUDS works. Number 30 and 31 relate to making sure that wheelchair user dwellings, there are 10% of them and 90% of the remaining units to be accessible and adaptable. 32, so this is quite a long one, which I think this is the one you said you saw doubled up. So this is just an intrusive site investigation in terms of contamination.
This
Very
seems
similar-
fine, but then the following conditions are also on contamination, aren't they?
I think we could probably take out 32 or 31, whichever.
Okay.
Take out 33, was that the...
I think it was take out 32,
Take
because
out
then
32.
33 up to...
To give you a little bit of background, so 33 onwards to 37 were all the ones suggested by the Environment Agency.
Right, well, let's
30
go through the...
32 was one that was sort of from the internal environmental consultant. So 32 could go. I say if you're going to move...
So either you keep 32 or you keep 33
I'd keep
on
32
to-
because it's come from the Environment Agency and is...
No, 30. The inspector said...
I'll keep 33, sorry.
Yeah.
So,
That's what I mean.
Scratch 32.
Yeah.
It's not just 33, it's 33. 34 is also contamination.
Yeah.
And 35 is contamination. So you're taking out 32 and keeping 33 to 35. Okay, I understand that. 36.
No drainage systems for the infiltration into surface water into the ground.
Now, 37 seems to duplicate number 9 on piling. So,
May I ask on this one
yes, please.
about we will not permit activity, the last sentence, we will not permit activities on parts of the site where an unacceptable risk is posed to controlled waters. Can you explain what you mean by controlled waters?
I think the controlled waters are the aquifers underground, which are controlled by the Environment Agency.
If we have an underground stream here, which is a possibility, could that not be?
Oh, it's well. I think the flood expert the other day said it was well beneath, but it's just to make sure.
And in any event, this is in the reason for the condition. So, so if we get a planning permission, if we do, when the Secretary of State writes conditions, the Secretary of State won't put reasons in, will he? So we won't have this stuff there anyway. You've asked for the reasons, I think, simply to give you a hint, if you like, as to why we've got this condition and that condition.
Well, if I'm happy with the reasons, I'll simply repeat them to the Secretary of State.
In the body of your report, but he won't impose them as in the condition.
No, he won't put them in the condition, but what I will put in the body of my report would be, for the reasons set out, other than X, Y, and Z, the condition should be attached. I won't duplicate it or rewrite it.
But have we got a duplicate? I think more important, if I might say, have we doubled up?
37 and 9 both refer to piling.
Yes, they do, yeah.
So we need one or the other, not both.
Not number 9 out because that was Thames Water.
Okay, fine.
Only because the Environment Agency said we don't object subject to keeping our conditions.
Yes.
So.
Right. So 38.
So, this is a submission of a construction method statement.
This is PD.
A construction logistics plan to be agreed in accordance with Transport for London as well.
Okay. And then it's got 39's got all the drawing numbers.
Yeah. 40 is the 3 years. I'm sure that will get
Has
moved.
everyone double, or could everyone double, or not everyone, but could someone please double check the drawing numbers for me?
I suspect they've been triple checked, to be honest, sir, but they'll be quadruple checked now.
That would be very good. Yes, please. So number 40.
So now we're on to the island site conditions. So very detailed. So these are conditions specifically relating to phase 2. So just to the island site.
Thank you.
Lots of details required to make sure the standard is kept as the outstanding quality. Lots and lots.
And 41X is the 4110 is the details of the mechanical ventilation systems where they appear on any of the development elevations.
Right.
Now, I think from memory we've shown the mechanical ventilation on the drawing. Okay, so this still isn't tight enough, I don't think, to...
I think that probably is, isn't it?
Is it?
It's asking for detail.
We could take the brackets out.
Yeah.
Yes.
The earlier one I was concerned about was where it was screening.
Yes.
Which I'd expect for the roof, but not elsewhere. This is asking for details of any.
Yeah, my only point, sir, is that we've said throughout in the design, I'm being very fair here, to be honest. I think a typical developer would shoot me for saying this, but I haven't got a typical developer client here. So this is because we've said in the design and access statement we're going above and beyond in relation to these filtration of air, and so people using the church and community facilities will have clean air as well, if you like.
Right.
And I'm not sure this condition would be good enough to make sure that we do that we deliver our promise to receive.
Now this condition is in terms of appearance, is it not?
Yes.
And we've got another condition on the...
Oh, is there still one to come? Okay,
well, that's what I asked earlier on.
Yes.
Ah.
That's my point.
Was this my answer to the earlier on?
I think it was.
Yeah, right. So that's...
In which case,
thank you for that.
I don't think it's a good enough answer.
No, it's not.
And so we will have to add something to a condition.
I like to think I would have come back on that. Okay.
Okay, so we need to add something to a condition somewhere to pick this point out. That paragraph in the DAS, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So 42. 42 is public art?
Yes. Strategy.
Is that a local plan requirement?
There's a saved one, UD16, and CLP2, which is emerging, DM15.
Okay. If you could put the reference and the reasons, that would be helpful to me, please.
Um, 42, so this is another one. You might want to lock the word out broadly. So this is the highway works around the island site.
So take out
43, sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Take out the broadly.
44, this is what Ron spoke about earlier, car park management plan, to be agreed with Transport for London as well. 46, petrol and oil interceptors to the car parks.
Yes.
So that was 45. 40, yeah, sorry, 40, that was 45, sorry.
There should be a retention clause on 45.
Yes, for as long as the development exists.
Yeah, after retaining, isn't it?
46, so there's a few windows on the northwestern elevation which could be obscure glaze to prevent overlooking.
Right.
Then there's one about window cleaning equipment, making sure it's provided in accordance with details to be submitted. If it is. Number 48, so the requirement to submit a visitor management strategy, noise insulation for details for exit doors, walls and windows, and a ventilation strategy for when the multi-purpose hall is in use to ensure that the doors and windows remain closed.
Right.
49, exit doors and windows serving the multi-purpose hall within phase 2 to remain closed whilst it's in use. Number 50, no sound amplification equipment shall be used in the multi-purpose hall unless suitable cut-out devices are installed, with the exception of emergencies, I think it's in there. 51.
Cut the minister off in full flow.
Yeah, so 51 has the cut-out. So 51 has the cut-out device, sorry. It's split over 2 conditions. Sorry, Reverend. Restriction on hours, 52, for amplified speech or music.
Now, does community uses include the church then or not?
I think we established that they do.
Right. Perhaps that should be clear whether or not it does.
Community/church, couldn't you? Or whatever, community and church uses.
Yeah, okay.
That involves amplified speech or music.
53.
So this is details for lighting, external lighting scheme. 54, in accordance with the BREEAM Excellent, which there's an energy statement which says that it can reach that.
Yeah.
55, details to protect the adjacent library whilst construction works are ongoing.
Thank you.
And a construction methodology in relation to the neighbouring listed building to make sure it's not, so to make sure it's protected. Number 57, details of CCTV. 58, if there are any cranes that are particularly high, they might temporarily have a light on to stop someone getting in over the hills and flying into it. 59, this is like a meanwhile use, just if it stays dormant for a while, some sort of activity on the site, given the central location. Number 60, what is number 60? Oh, details of street trees, yeah.
Right.
To be agreed with Transport for London because it's their road.
Okay. Now you then have a list of informatives which it's not our policy to add. So.
Oh, sorry. Don't worry, the applicant's well aware of SEAL.
Yeah. I have a feeling they are aware of SEAL. Right. Any other questions on the conditions at this stage? Mr. King.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've taken from the front. The first one is, what happens to surface water during construction? Is there some way you're going to deal with it? I can see what happens now, and I can see what happens when you've constructed it, but it will rain during the course of construction.
There's a construction logistics plan. I can only think that would capture it in more ways than one. No one gets
that. Construction management. Number 8 is the drainage. That's condition 8. Yeah. Okay. Condition 8. Commencement.
I've been told from the experts behind me that there's robust guidance for construction logistics plan that should cater for all these issues.
So my point is, as you construct bits of the site, you will divert surface water to other bits.
Yes.
That's my point, if you could answer that.
What does the construction management plan.
Condition 38 is the relevant one. That's the CMS and the CLP.
Could add, it's got mud and dust. Could we add surface water to that?
Thank you.
Prior to commencement for each phase, a detailed drainage strategy.
Thank you. Mr. King, what's your next one?
Yeah, in 14, but I think it probably applies more to the island.
Can I just interrupt you for one moment? I'm ever so sorry. So I think it doesn't matter, I don't think, it's belt and braces. But the point that's just been made is covered by condition 8, surely, because condition 8 in the middle says you have to construct and complete the development in accordance with this drainage strategy, which covers everything under the sun. So in 8, because 8 isn't just that your finished building needs to...
I thought I asked that this is for the finished, isn't it? So
No, it says have been constructed and completed in accordance with the details. So I would say it's covered by, I'm not trying to be, evasive here, I think it is covered by 8, but if you think it would be useful to have an extra item in 38 or so be it. But
okay, well, I'll read the 2 again. Yeah, thank you.
In 14, it talks about plans for vehicles, access, egress arrangements, car parking, etc. Vehicle egress arrangements in phase 2. And this morning we heard about that the council would advise the, if you like, the church on how to implement monitoring of idling and a plan of perhaps staggering some meetings so people didn't arrive and leave all at the same time when different meetings were going on. And should something like that be included in there?
Well, there's a visitor management strategy much further. In terms of the anti-idling campaign promotion, that was in the 106.
Yeah. It was, yes.
So it's covered.
But I mean, do read the document again and check that you're happy it's covered.
Thank you.
I'll give another opportunity for comments on these.
And then the point you picked out, Inspector, on 18 about service deliveries, I can understand how you can plan during construction and how the church and the community facilities can be dealt with for delivering things. But will there be a plan for residents? Because obviously residents will have to move furniture, other white goods in, and they will get deliveries from time to time.
That's both. That would include residents as well.
Okay.
So
you could
yeah.
Which number is this?
You could add it. Number 18, I think, Mr. King was talking about. He wants to make sure residents' deliveries are captured, but it says...
It would be. It would be.
I would say a delivery and servicing plan for the whole site would be needed. That would include the residential and the community use, so it would capture that.
Okay. This may not be the right number, but I use it. And 28, my colleague asked you about water use.
Yes, it is 28.
I couldn't see anything in the document that liaised with what used to be called Sutton and East Surrey Water Company, because the water company is separate to Thames, the water supply company. And my issue with it is just to ensure that there is sufficient pressure in the water main, if the fire brigade should ever be called, to enable them to fight the fire in the 17-storey block. I raise that because there was a bit of an issue around that in Grenville Tower, but we also had another development further in the south of the borough where in fact the fire brigade found the water pressure was insufficient, and then they had to run something like a mile of hose to somewhere else to get sufficient water.
Right, well now the Fire Authority commented on this application, didn't they? That there were consultations. Perhaps someone can just make a note to highlight where that is and check.
So while there's been an interruption in the flow, so to speak, no pun intended, so I've just been thinking about these sprinklers in the tower.
Yeah.
Now the kit for the sprinklers is shown on the drawings, and so the condition which says in accordance with the drawings. on the face of it, should secure the provision.
But there isn't a
sprinklers.
condition, is there?
There isn't a separate
No.
sentence somewhere, so we need in the next draft to
Yeah.
make sure that that's clear, belt and braces.
Yeah, that would be good. And yeah, if someone can check that the consultation from the fire, whichever it was.
We didn't receive one from.
You didn't?
No, I'm not sure. Where did you read that? Sorry.
No idea.
There was quite a large section in the back of the design and access statement about how they treat sort of fire escape.
Might have been that, but perhaps we can double check that point and check that whoever should have been consulted was, and that they were satisfied with the water pressure.
Yeah. Could I ask that, as the building will be, and I think sensibly, sprinklers, that there will be sufficient pressure to work the sprinklers on the
Well,
surface?
obviously, yeah. The two go hand in glove. Right.
The other couple of points I've got is, it talked about additional electric power points for cars on site, but would there be any in the location additional for members of the public in any of the parking bays surrounding the site?
No, we're not.
These all relate to the development site itself. So down in the basement, not outside and around.
Right. On 57 with CCTV, it talks about internal to the site.
Right.
But we have asked in a couple of other developments where additional cameras could be placed outside that monitors the immediate area outside the site, because that is sometimes, if you get a problem, not necessarily entirely inside the site, it's also outside, which I don't think is huge, but a couple of extra cameras, maybe in Russell Hill Road or Banstead Road, could be included.
What does it?
Well, it says publicly accessible areas, so this would include the public area, as in the public square. So I'd imagine they might have a small one somewhere near the entrance, looking at that square. We certainly wouldn't be asking them to put CCTV up in and around the district.
No, I'm not asking for the entire district.
So the condition would cover that. You'd need to keep in touch with Mr. White to make sure that when the details come in and he approves it, it's got the cameras where you want them.
Yeah, well, I'd be just keen that the camera viewed over bits of Russell Hill and at the other side, Banstead Road, as well as just on the site.
Yeah, well, there's provision for that, but it would need following up. Okay. Any other points?
Yeah, I had one last point, if I can just find it. SIL money. In the SIL money, I understand the SIL money, and it's passed to Croydon, and a proportion is passed to the GLA and the Mayor. But it would be nice to see if a section or a percentage of the SIL money could actually be spent in Purley.
Nothing the inspector can do about that.
I think that's outside the scope of this inquiry.
I've made the point.
There is a community infrastructure delivery plan, nice big document on our website, which tells you where the money's going, where things are allocated and how it gets spent. So
there
have a look.
Happy weekend
It's all
reading
being
that.
spent in Coulsdon, don't you?
Reading that document.
Unfortunately, I think at the moment it's all going in a big drawer.
No, West Croydon bus station. There's one for you.
Okay. Anything else on the condition?
No, I haven't.
As I say, there'll be an opportunity to discuss them again next week, so do read through them and the legal agreement and raise anything later on.
Short notice on this.
Right, well, the draft of the conditions were circulated much earlier in the week.
Yeah.
Were they?
Yeah, they were.
They were,
Okay.
but this document only came today.
Right. Okay, anything else before we adjourn?
Is there any of the other objectors got any?
Well, I've just asked. Okay, so until 10 o'clock on Tuesday in this room, the inquiry is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, and have a nice weekend.
And you.